Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Freshagenda. And Steve, we're here
Mm.
and our weekly take.
Mm. Well, not quite weekly, but it's near enough. And we're covering just some thoughts.
Thoughts, feelings,
Yeah.
the latest GDT, of course, and equally, of course, the Child of the Week.
Yeah, the most important because it's close to the end. So just some thoughts. We pushed out an outlook last week, and while this certainly doesn't cover everything we talked about, just some of the things we find around the edges of change that are interesting.
Yeah, just top of mind. So we keep saying fundamentals are slowly getting better, but it sort of doesn't feel that way, does it, Steve?
No, it's not making a lot of difference to that GDT is making all the price action, and that's impacting fundamentals.
Sure.
Because it's causing change in some of the outcomes we're going to see. Certainly, pushing down on production in New Zealand, that's certainly an outcome of that. Because there's too much product coming in the short term onto the market through that channel, and that's creating the price signal. But is production slowing fast enough?
It doesn't feel that way.
No.
We've been talking about it for a while, and we keep seeing these changes in conditions, and we'll look at one at the end of the session, but it doesn't feel very fast. It's a slow grind, isn't it?
The demand side's still too inconsistent and weak.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose on the demand side, this is something we've been saying for a little while. China's not coming to save us. The economic news out of China just gets worse and worse. And there's no sign that there's any urgency in buying, is there, Steve?
No, it's slow. It's very slowly changing. And we'd have to do a full story, the whole milk powder story for that, and we don't want to do that here. We don't have time.
We didn't prepare it.
Well, it's not far below the surface. We could. I mean, it puts New Zealand like this seasonal bind.
Yeah.
You just can't escape making whole milk powder.
That's it.
There's more on the market. The major market, GDT is designed to be a clearinghouse for into the major markets.
Yeah, clearinghouse and price discovery. But that is what happens. And they've put a lot more product on there, and we've seen the effects of that in the last couple of weeks. This one a little different, but
we'll come to that.
We will.
There's this other thing, this double whammy in some of the important trademarks. So I suppose that's the case in China. It's the case in Southeast Asia. Firstly, there's been destocking.
Yeah, so we talked about in the wake of COVID, when things restarted and supply chains were very disrupted, a lot of fast-moving consumer goods companies kind of stocked up their supply chain so that they would have product. The just-in-time approach wasn't working. That's been slowly worked through. And now we've got the slow grind also of inflation on people's ability to spend.
Yep.
And that's impacting demand as well. So it's a bit of you've said it's a double whammy, Steve.
It is. No, I think it's kind of extending that. So, and everywhere there's this expectation 24 is going to be better.
Sure.
Yeah. Don't pin your hopes very strongly on it. It's got to be careful to take realistic expectations in the new year. We're a long way from that yet.
We are. Yep.
The other thing, short-term opportunists, we'll see the evidence of that in this GDT result. And also, there's been some short-term fixes which have kind of helped make the trade volumes look better. And be careful of that, because I think some of those things are not real. They won't be around long. So certainly Middle East involvement, or North, the MENA involvement in powder trade, and then the fact that the Latin American exporters have been pretty much absent from some of those markets they've crowded into in recent years because Brazil's been taking in more product. Now that's going to come to an end, but it's kind of helped make the situation better than what it would have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So
the lead up to this week's GDT, Steve, and with the future markets were not expecting much, were they?
No, the skim milk powder expectations were weaker. This just gone sideways and softer, and it's largely driven by just a lack of response on the demand side, even though supply is reducing in Europe and the US. The fat market in Europe seems to be going sideways. They're slightly weakening, I'd say. Futures are way above the spot market.
Yeah.
In this case. And then we can call out the whole lot, but let's just look at cheese in the US. The short-term tightness is still evident.
Yep.
There, which is and weakening later, and that's something also reflected in how GDT has responded. So the other thing in the run-up, whole milk powder looked like it was going to be better. Certainly the forward curves were, they've strengthened, and we had a good, a flattening pulse result. Gave away the result there at the end. Spoiler. So the other adjustments we occurred, a little typo correction there. This is the one we had last time, where we had more on offer. Correction, there was a little less on offer this time. Some volume shifted onto pulse. A little bit over the rest of the year with whole milk powder, but a bit more of a kick in the volume shifted across to pulse on skim milk powder. Took more than 20,000 tonnes out over that period. So we'll have to wait to see what that does later. That's in a shift to, I guess, reduce the exposure to China, if anything, who don't tend to buy on pulse.
Yeah.
So the result was broadly positive, but read the detail. I guess whole milk powder was up healthily. Skim was down. Short-term skim was down. Again, sag similar to what previous events have done. Cheddar was a mixed bag, and fats were quite a bit better for AMF. Yeah. We still see whole milk's just caught up one event. Really, we're back. We're back. We didn't get back to 2 events ago, so not exactly a strong result. Skim milk powder the same.
Yeah,
didn't go anywhere. Oops, too far ahead there. So the relativities on skim milk powder again. So the Oceania discount increased against European prices. We had weaker demand for skim milk powder in general. Very strong demand for AMF.
Yeah.
This event, the others close to average. And just the relativities on cheese, I think, is interesting. And this is something to watch as we'll go forward. The cheese market's expecting to get weaker. Going forward. Europe's been going sideways with their pricing. That's an optimistic spot gouda price. I think that's probably well above where the trades in the last few days we've seen have been. They've certainly not stayed up that well, but softening expectations as we go forward. Back to the demand story. These charts are probably out of order, but you look at that whole milk powder outcome. I mean, that's the most interesting thing out of this. That really lifted strongly. There were greater expectations that came to this event. Skim was very similar to the last time. Two worth calling out, but that's a big lift in the opening requirements for whole milk powder. They didn't come from China.
They sure did not.
So China's involved, but down again in percentage terms with a higher volume offered this time. They did have the same thing in skim milk powder, and we saw dips in both occasions. So that's the bad news. The Middle East stepped in, took the largest volume since sometime in 2015. And I've just shown there that, this is a recurring theme. It doesn't happen very often because we don't get this far down in terms of the pricing cycle. But the volumes this is in total trade, the volume shipped into that region for milk powder go up whenever prices go right down.
Yeah.
So it's opportunistic buying. The oil price index in the background there, I mean, I don't try and cast the extremities because it doesn't really capture the movement in the whole milk powder index. But it doesn't tend to drive it. It's about the price of the ingredient in that market. When it comes down, they're stepping in, and we're in the middle of that. And with those volumes on the right hand side there, probably got a bit to go.
Yeah, they've got potential.
Yeah. Also increasing. I mean, skim milk powder is the other part of that story, but that's also been quite good, relatively quite good, given their low buying activities. Southeast Asia came back a little stronger in both powders. So mixed news. It's not that's not bad. It's but it's still, in terms of skim milk powder, still well below where we were last year.
Yeah.
So in synthetic values, that's still, that discount is, well, it's dropped a bit.
Yeah, it's coming back together, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those two lines. And the AMF premium to discount?
It improved a little.
Yeah.
Under $1,000.
But still a pretty good buy.
Yeah. Bargain. The New Zealand, I wrote in the GDT wrap this morning, I heard a collective sigh of relief from across the ditch.
Yeah.
That while we think, has the rot stopped with whole milk powder, we'll have to see, because when we take account of who bought and who didn't, I don't think we're out of the woods. But it did bring up the spot value quite a bit. We're still looking at around $7 for the full season in FY24.
That's where he is.
Chart of the week.
Well, this week we thought we'd go across to Europe, because we've sort of been watching what's happening in Europe in terms of milk production. And we've had France in decline for quite some time, but Germany had sort of improved in recent weeks, and then just in the last lot of data, it sort of slowed again.
Yeah.
So, not being on the ground, unfortunately, we're assuming that these very wet conditions have something to do with that, Steve.
I think there's a good chance of that. So the last data is through August, I think. So that's probably going to be a factor for a little while it dries out. The weather outlook suggests there's not a lot of this normal rainfall in the next 2 months, but warmer conditions. That might mean a lot of grass growth.
Yep.
We'd be thinking there's a risk we see that big boom in growth again, given they've had good rainfall across the continent.
Yep.
We might actually see the recurrence of some good pasture conditions lifting volumes in that, in Q4. So watch out for that.
If it stays warm, yeah.
Slowing milk is not really behind, it's not really locked in yet.
Yeah.
So that's something to watch.
Watch this space.
Okay. That's all from us. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.